Yo, so a long, long, long time ago, there was this massive pizza, and this pizza had around 1,000 slices. But one little slice of pizza, tiny little sliver of pizza, got separated from the rest of the massive, huge, infinitely big pizza. And on this pizza lived some people, and these people lived on this piece of pizza, and some of them had lived when they were connected with the massive pizza, but then the next generation could only hear about the whole pizza from their parents, and then the generation after that only from their grandparents, and then the generation after that was the first generation that didn't live with anyone who had lived within the whole pizza. They were just in this tiny little sliver. And thousands of years went on living on this tiny little piece of pizza. And they came up with a whole culture on this tiny little piece of pizza. And that culture, they had certain ways of doing everything. So all the babies who grew up were like, oh, these are just the ways of our pizza world. We don't think there's anything outside our tiny little sliver, you know? And so what happened was, as time went on, people felt like there was something missing. They were like, well, we have all this stuff and our ways, our life, but it feels like something's missing. It feels like there's something out there, but we just live in this pizza world, and it doesn't seem like there's anything out there. And so what I think is that in our Western culture, we are living on this tiny little sliver, and so all the aspects of our culture are only operating from one little sliver perspective, and we've seen barely anything outside. And once in a while something comes along, like a new idea that would fit in with a lot of the other slivers from around the whole massive pizza. But most people are stuck, and I used to be stuck within a tiny sliver within that one separated sliver. So I was even stuck in a sliver within a sliver, so I felt completely trapped. And now I feel like I'm exploring the rest of the massive pizza, which are all these other cultures and ways of knowing. And a lot of these things it's hard for us to imagine because we've been on this same sliver. Our parents have said, this is the way of the sliver pizza. And so once in a while, we're slowly breaking away from our tiny little sliver. And I think this applies to everything. Like, what if our forms of architecture are just a tiny sliver of all the possible forms of architecture? And what if our clothing and our things are just a tiny little sliver of all the possible things? For example, shoes like this, which I've been wearing, called 5-finger shoes. Everyone thinks they're so crazy because they've been stuck in their tiny little sliver concept of what shoes are. And maybe our music is just one little sliver of all the possible realms of music. And what if our language, our very language that we interpret and think through, is just a sliver of all the possible ways of interpreting and perceiving the world? And what if our dreams are some people don't even remember their dreams. What if our dream experience is just a tiny little sliver of this massive possible dream experience? And what if our entire culture is just living in a tiny little sliver of all the possible experiences in life? And by living in this Western sliver culture, we are being trapped in our lives. We're not living full lives. And what if our sense of everything, experiencing life even, is just a tiny little sliver of what could possibly be out there? So my recommendation to everyone watching this is to think about how we live in a tiny little sliver and what things keep us within that sliver. Is it TV? Is it our job? What is keeping us within this tiny little sliver of life that we could possibly be experiencing and just loving and what relationships keep us within a tiny little sliver, what ways of thinking keep us in a tiny little sliver. So that's my question for you. What keeps you in a tiny little sliver when there's a lot more out there? Peace.